Hello and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm glad you've chosen to join me tonight, or today, depending on when and where you're listening. Before we begin, I'd love to know, where in the world are you tuning in from, and what time is it where you are right now? Whether you're nestled under a duvet, curled up on the couch, or pretending to fold laundry while secretly winding down, I'm happy you're here. If you find yourself enjoying this gentle journey through nature's wonders, it would mean a lot if you'd tap the like button and maybe even subscribe. It's a small thing that helps this sleepy little corner of the internet grow, and I truly appreciate your support. Tonight's topic is the colours of nature, from butterflies to bacteria, a soft, meandering look at how and why the world is as colourful as it is. We'll explore shimmering beetle shells, glowing jellyfish, and even bacteria that wear tiny rainbow coats. It's a story told not just with science, but with wonder. Because when you look closely enough, even the invisible becomes dazzling. Now, I do hope this video doesn't turn out too interesting. Heaven forbid you learn something instead of falling asleep. But if it does keep your mind a little too active, I promise it's all in the name of curiosity. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's gently unravel the mysteries of colour together. And just before we begin, this video is for relaxation and educational purposes only. It is not intended as medical advice or a substitute for professional care. Let's begin with something deceptively simple. What is colour? We talk about it every day. The sky's blue, that apple is red, your socks don't match. But the truth is, colour isn't really something that exists out there in the world in a solid, tangible way. It's not painted onto objects like icing on a cake. Colour is more like a conversation between light and your brain. And as with all conversations, a little bit of misunderstanding is part of the magic. Let's start with the light itself. Light is a form of electromagnetic radiation. That might sound a bit intimidating, but it's just energy travelling in waves, like ripples on a pond, except much, much faster. These waves come in different lengths, from the very short gamma rays to the very long radio waves. Wedged between them is a tiny sliver known as visible light, the part our eyes are able to detect. It's just a fraction of what's out there, a small window in an otherwise vast and invisible sea. Visible light includes all the colours of the rainbow, literally. Each colour corresponds to a specific wavelength. Violet light has the shortest wavelength of the visible spectrum, and red has the longest. Everything else, blue, green, yellow, orange, falls somewhere in between. What's wild is that all of these colours are just different flavours of the same thing, electromagnetic energy. Now, here's where it gets interesting. When light hits an object, several things can happen. Some of the light is absorbed, some of it is reflected, some might even pass through. The way an object interacts with light determines what colour we perceive it to be. If a banana appears yellow, it's because it's absorbing most wavelengths of light and reflecting the yellow ones back to your eyes. The banana itself isn't yellow. It's just bouncing yellow light your way and tricking your brain into assigning a colour. And the brain, it turns out, is a highly enthusiastic, if slightly gullible, participant in this process. Your eyes contain special cells called cone cells that are sensitive to red, green, and blue light. These are your visual tuning forks, humming along to different parts of the spectrum. When light enters the eye, these cones send signals to your brain, which then performs a bit of neurological alchemy to turn those signals into the experience of colour. So when you look at a ripe strawberry, what you're really seeing is light reflecting off the surface of the fruit, stimulating your red-sensitive cones more than the others, and your brain going, "Ah, yes, delicious red." But here's the kicker. Colour only exists inside your mind. It's a subjective experience. Other creatures see the world in completely different hues. Some, like dogs, have fewer types of cone cells and see a more limited palette. Others, like certain birds and insects, have more cone types than we do. Some can even see ultraviolet light, a colour we can't perceive at all. Imagine what the world must look like to a bee navigating a garden filled with flowers painted in ultraviolet patterns. To them, a daisy isn't just white and yellow, it's a glowing landing pad. Now there are other ways light interacts with matter that affect how we perceive colour. One of them is scattering, which explains why the sky's blue. As sunlight passes through Earth's atmosphere, the shorter blue wavelengths are scattered in all directions by tiny molecules in the air. This is called Rayleigh scattering, because blue light is scattered more than red light. The sky appears blue most of the time. At sunrise and sunset, the sun's light has to pass through more of the atmosphere, and most of the blue light gets scattered out before it reaches your eyes. What's left? The longer wavelengths, reds and oranges, creating those stunning sunsets. Another optical effect is refraction, which is when light bends as it moves from one medium to another. This bending separates the different wavelengths and spreads them out, which is how we get rainbows. Raindrops in the sky act like tiny prisms, splitting sunlight into its colourful components. It's not that the colours were hiding, it's just that the water revealed them, like peeling back a layer of light. Reflection is another player in this colourful game. A mirror reflects all visible wavelengths of light equally, which is why it doesn't appear to have a colour of its own. Instead, it gives you the eerie pleasure of seeing yourself and whatever is in front of it. On the other hand, materials that are glossy or metallic reflect light in a more directional way, creating that shiny, sometimes silvery appearance. Then there's absorption, where light gets completely swallowed by an object. Black, for example, isn't really a colour in the traditional sense. It's what we perceive when almost no light is reflected back to our eyes. That's why black clothing gets so hot in the sun. It's absorbing a lot of energy. Conversely, white reflects most wavelengths, which is why it feels cooler in bright light. Sometimes light is not only reflected or absorbed, but also emitted. Think of glowing neon signs or the soft blue of a firefly on a summer evening. That's light being generated by the object itself, though that's a topic we'll dip into later. But let's pause and soak in the idea that even the most vibrant colours we see are just waves of energy, shaped by the quirks of physics and translated by our biology into a rainbow of experiences. The world isn't coloured, not exactly, it's illuminated, it's encoded, and your brain is doing the decoding. Even something as seemingly basic as white light is a blend, a medley of all the visible wavelengths mixed together. When you shine white light through a prism and watch it break apart into red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, you're witnessing a kind of revelation. The light was always full of colour, it just needed the right touch to let it out. It's a bit poetic, really. Light holds infinite potential, and everything you see is just one interpretation. The grass isn't green because it wants to be green, it's green because it reflects that part of the spectrum, and our eyes and brains happen to agree. Somewhere, some creature with a different set of eyes might look at the same lawn and see something completely different. So the next time you catch yourself marvelling at a crimson sunset, a brilliant blue jay, or the soft greens of a mossy hillside, remember, you're not just seeing colour, you're experiencing a remarkable collaboration between light, matter and your own perceptive brain, a symphony of wavelengths conducted by nature and performed in the theatre of your mind, and that in itself is a kind of magic. Let's take a slow, curious stroll into one of nature's most astonishing tricks, structural colour. At first glance, it might not seem so different from regular colour. After all, a blue morpho butterfly is blue, a peacock feather is, well, peacock-coloured, and some beetles look like they were dipped in liquid chrome. But the secret to their shimmering brilliance isn't pigment, it's physics. Most of the colours we're used to, like the red of a tomato or the green of a leaf, come from pigments. These are molecules that absorb certain wavelengths of light and reflect others. Pigments are like tiny chemical filters. But structural colour doesn't work that way. In fact, it's not really about absorption at all. Instead, it's all about the shape of the surface itself. its microscopic structure. Imagine you have a surface so finely arranged, so exquisitely detailed, that it can twist and bounce light in very specific ways. That's what happens with structural colour. At the microscopic or even nanoscopic level, the surface has ridges, grooves, layers, or lattices that interact with incoming light. These structures don't absorb colour. They interfere with it, bending and bouncing light waves around in such a way that certain colours are amplified while others cancel each other out. Let's dive into an example, the blue morpho butterfly, one of the most dazzling insects on Earth. Its wings aren't actually blue because of a blue pigment. In fact, if you crush the wings into powder, which to be clear is a bit rude, they would look brownish. That's because the wing scales are made from chitin, a naturally brown material much like fingernails or crab shells. But when the scales are intact, they're arranged in a way that creates an intricate lattice, with layers only a few hundred nanometers apart. These layers cause a phenomenon known as constructive interference. Light waves bouncing off the top and bottom of the layers can align in such a way that certain wavelengths reinforce each other. In the case of the morpho, the spacing is just right to amplify blue wavelengths and cancel out most others. The result? That breathtaking electric blue that seems to glow and shimmer with every movement. This type of colour production is incredibly efficient, because it doesn't rely on chemicals that can degrade or fade over time. Pigments can be fragile. They break down under ultraviolet light, oxygen, or heat. Structural colours, on the other hand, are more like sculptures made of light. As long as the surface stays intact, the colour remains as vivid as ever. You can also find structural colour in peacock feathers. These luxurious fans of blue, green and gold aren't coloured by pigment either. Each feather is covered with tiny barbules that contain arrays of microscopic melanin rods layered with keratin. These create repeating structures that reflect and refract light into those signature jewel tones. It's like having thousands of microscopic disco balls, all perfectly angled to reflect glory back to the eyes of admiring peahens. And speaking of admiring eyes, structural colour doesn't just dazzle humans, it plays a big role in animal communication. A flash of iridescent wing or a burst of shimmering tail can be a signal. Look at me, I'm healthy, genetically robust and ready for love. In evolutionary terms, structural colour is a high-maintenance but high-reward form of visual signalling. It's costly to build these precise nanoscale structures, so only the fittest individuals can afford to make them, and maintain them. It's like wearing a suit that only stays tailored if you're eating right and exercising regularly. A very sparkly suit. Now, while we're on the subject of flashy insects, let's not overlook beetles. Many species, especially jewel beetles and scarabs, have exoskeletons that look like metallic armour. Some appear gold, others emerald, some even shift between hues as you tilt them. Again, this is due to structural colour, often caused by multiple layers within the cuticle that create interference patterns. Some beetles have what's known as a multi-layer reflector, which consists of alternating layers of materials with different refractive indices. When light hits these layers, it's partially reflected at each boundary, and the reflected waves interfere with one another, amplifying some colours and reducing others. This makes the beetles look metallic, like tiny armoured tanks built by an extremely artistic blacksmith. Structural colour can even be found in birds that don't seem iridescent at all. Blue jays, for example, appear blue, but their feathers contain no blue pigment. Instead, their feather structure scatters light in a way that cancels out all colours except blue. This scattering, called Tyndall scattering, is similar to why the sky's blue. Shorter blue wavelengths are scattered more than longer red ones. If you were to shine a red light on a blue jay feather, it would look grey or black because there's no actual blue pigment to reflect red wavelengths. It's a reminder that what we see is always dependent on both the object and the light shining on it. Some creatures have taken this to mind-bending levels. Take the Pollia condensata fruit, sometimes called the marble berry. This tiny African fruit holds the record for the most intense colour in nature, not because it's packed with pigment, but because its surface has spiral-layered cellulose that reflects blue light with stunning efficiency. The fruit is so shiny and vivid that it looks fake, almost plastic. And despite its radiant appearance, it contains almost no nutritional value. Birds are still drawn to it though, because, well, who can resist something that looks like a glittery gumball? And it's not just nature that's dazzled by this idea. Scientists and engineers are now trying to mimic structural colour in technology. Imagine paint that never fades, fabrics that change colour without dye, or holographic surfaces that respond to light angles. These aren't sci-fi dreams. They're very real developments in material science, inspired directly by beetles and butterflies. One exciting application is in photonic crystals, materials engineered to manipulate light in specific ways, just like a butterfly wing does. These crystals could lead to advances in solar panels, sensors, and even stealth technology. Nature's microscopic sculptures are now serving as blueprints for futuristic inventions. There's also growing interest in structural colours for eco-friendly alternatives to traditional dyes. The textile industry, for instance, is one of the biggest polluters globally. Dyes often require toxic chemicals and vast amounts of water. But structural colour, if replicated efficiently, could offer a sustainable way to colour fabrics. No pigments, no pollution, just light doing what it does best. And here's something to ponder as you drift deeper into thought. Structural colour is inherently interactive. It changes depending on your perspective and the angle of light. A butterfly's wing might appear electric blue from one direction and dull brown from another. A beetle may glimmer green in the sunlight but seem almost black in the shade. In a way, these colours only exist in the moment, a fleeting collaboration between form and light. There's something poetic about that. These colours aren't fixed or painted. They're constantly being created and recreated as light touches them. They're ephemeral, like whispers of light shaped by evolution. Of course, not all creatures with structural colour are trying to show off. Sometimes the shimmer helps with camouflage. The rainbow sheen of a beetle's shell might help it blend into the glossy, wet surfaces of a rainforest. The shifting colours can confuse predators, making it harder to focus on the creature's outline. It's a sort of optical misdirection, like wearing a disco ball as camouflage in a mirror maze. And just when you think you've seen it all, there are even animals that combine pigment and structural colour to fine-tune their appearance. Some birds and reptiles layer pigments under structurally coloured surfaces to deepen or shift the overall hue. It's the visual equivalent of layering watercolour on top of holographic foil. Nature doesn't just know one trick. It's a whole artist's studio, endlessly mixing media. So the next time you catch a flash of iridescence in a dragonfly wing, or see the glint of a beetle on a forest path, remember, you're not just seeing colour, you're witnessing a precise and ancient engineering marvel. Structures measured in billionths of a metre are bending the laws of physics to create something that looks, and sometimes feels, like magic. And all without a single drop of paint. Some colours in nature shimmer. They dance, they shift, they glide across surfaces like living rainbows. You tilt your head, the angle changes, and suddenly a deep emerald green becomes a shimmering violet, then flashes into a cool moonlit blue. This is not an illusion. It is not even pigment. This is iridescence, one of the most dazzling and ephemeral tricks that nature plays with light. Iridescence is a special kind of structural colour, but it's more than just reflection or refraction. It's a dynamic interplay between light, layers, and movement. The word itself comes from the Greek goddess Iris, the personification of the rainbow, and it's as poetic a term as the phenomenon deserves. To understand how it works, let's take a closer look, not with a microscope, but with our imaginations. Picture a soap bubble. It's just a thin film of water and soap, almost nothing at all. But when sunlight hits it, you get those swirling, oil-slick colours that change with every breath of air. The thickness of the soap film changes across its surface, and those tiny variations cause light waves to bounce and interfere in specific shifting ways. Some wavelengths cancel out, others are amplified. The result? A living, breathing rainbow trapped in a transparent sphere. This is the essence of iridescence. It's caused by thin film interference, where multiple layers, usually transparent or semi-transparent, cause light to bounce, overlap, and interfere. The exact colour you see depends on your angle, the angle of the light, and the thickness of the layers. It's not static, it's theatrical. In nature, this principle is used with astonishing creativity. One of the most famous examples is, of course, the peacock feather. Each feather is a marvel of engineering, made up of tiny flat barbules layered with melanine and keratin. These layers are stacked just so, perfectly spaced to cause interference that produces those rich blues and greens and bronzes. But the truly magical part is that these colours move with the light. A slight tilt of the head, a shift in the breeze, and the entire feather seems to come alive with motion. And nature doesn't stop at birds. Iridescence can be found in insects, fish, reptiles, and even plants. Dragonflies, for instance, often have wings that shimmer with violet and gold, depending on the angle of the sun. Their wings are made of chitin, a strong flexible material layered in such a way that it creates that distinctive glimmer. Beetles are another excellent showcase. The jewel beetle, with its metallic green or gold shell, uses a multi-layered cuticle to scatter and reflect light in vibrant shifting hues. And if you've ever seen a scarab beetle, especially one preserved from ancient Egyptian times, you'll know that their shells can rival any gemstone. In fact, some ancient cultures used beetle shells in jewellery, not just for their durability but for their radiant mystical appearance. Even underwater, iridescence finds a stage. Many marine animals use it to their advantage in the dark or dim depths of the sea. Fish like sardines and mackerel have shiny silver scales that can reflect and scatter light in complex ways, making it harder for predators to lock onto them. Iridescence, in this case, becomes a kind of camouflage, not because it hides them completely, but because it makes them unpredictable. And then there are the masters of iridescence, the cephalopods. Squid, octopuses and cuttlefish are the drama queens of the ocean. They can not only change the colour of their skin, but also the pattern and the texture, and they can do it in the blink of an eye. Some species even have iridophores, specialised skin cells that reflect light in shimmering waves. Unlike pigment-based coloration, which takes time and chemistry to produce, iridescence in these animals is instantaneous, fluid, and often mesmerising. Scientists believe that cephalopods use iridescence for communication, camouflage, and possibly even emotional expression. Imagine wearing a mood ring that shifts colours all over your body, only you're doing it to flirt with a mate, hide from a predator, or confuse a camera-happy marine biologist. Now, iridescence isn't always useful for defence. Sometimes it's just plain showy. Birds of paradise, those surreal creatures from Papua New Guinea, have feathers that can seem to glow from within. They fan out shimmering chests, flutter their iridescent throats, and dance in hypnotic circles, all to impress a potential mate. In this case, beauty is very much the point. If the light doesn't catch you just right, well, the dance might fall flat. But when it does, it's a display that borders on supernatural. There's even a kind of iridescence in plants, though it's more subtle. Some tropical plants, like Begonia pavonina, have blue shimmering leaves when viewed at certain angles. This iridescence isn't just for decoration. It may help the plant optimize light absorption in dim, shaded environments. By bouncing light within their cellular structures, these leaves can increase the efficiency of photosynthesis, almost like installing a mirrored ceiling in a dark room to make the most of every photon. Butterflies, too, are champions of iridescence. Beyond the blue morpho, which we've already met, there are countless species that wear wings like shifting silks. The green hairstreak butterfly, for example, uses minute ridges on its wing scales to create a vibrant green that can flash to gold depending on the angle. And while it might look like these butterflies are just trying to win a fashion contest, there's evolutionary pressure behind that sparkle. Bright shifting colours can confuse predators, signal mates, or even mimic dangerous or poisonous species. Even human-made things try to emulate this natural brilliance. Think of the surface of a CD or DVD, how it gleams in rainbow arcs when tilted. That's not pigment either. It's caused by a diffraction grating, a surface etched with tiny parallel lines that interfere with the light in predictable, dazzling ways. Engineers and designers have learned from nature, reverse engineering these effects to create new kinds of paint, makeup, fabrics, and even high-security inks for currency and ID cards. But for all its beauty, iridescence also plays tricks on us. Because it changes with angle and light, it can be hard to photograph or reproduce. A peacock feather in person is a symphony of movement and gleam. A photograph, often just a nice greenish blob. Our eyes can dance with light in ways that cameras still struggle to replicate. There's something uniquely alive about iridescent colour, something that resists being captured. There's a certain poetry in that. Iridescence is not just about appearance, it's about interaction. It's colour that depends on the viewer. It exists in the space between object and observer, like a secret that only reveals itself to those who move, who look from different angles, who pay attention. It's performative colour, and we, the observers, are part of the performance. You could think of iridescence as a reminder from nature to move around once in a while, shift your angle, look again. What seemed dull might suddenly come alive. What was once invisible might shimmer into view. And finally, let's not forget, iridescence is fragile. It relies on precision, on layers being exactly the right distance apart, on light hitting from just the right direction. A scratch, a smear, even a bit of wear and tear can break the magic. This is perhaps why so many iridescent surfaces in nature are limited to outer coatings, delicate parts, and specific displays. It's not a colour you keep in your back pocket. It's a colour you unveil for special occasions. So the next time you see a beetle gleaming in the sunlight or a bird's feather catching the light just so, pause for a moment. You're witnessing not just a splash of colour, but a fleeting masterpiece of physics and biology, layered like a symphony and painted with light. No pigments, no dyes, just structure, movement, and the infinite possibilities hidden in a simple beam of sunlight. Let's step away from shimmering rainbows and glimmering beetle shells for a moment and settle into something a little more grounded. Something you can hold in your hand, smear on a canvas, or find staining your fingers after eating too many berries. Let's talk about pigments, nature's paint box. Unlike structural colour, which relies on the physical interaction of light with microscopic surfaces, pigments are all about chemistry. They're molecules that absorb some wavelengths of light and reflect others. The light that bounces off, or sometimes passes through, is what your eyes interpret as colour. If you've ever dyed a shirt, painted a wall, or dropped turmeric into a pot of rice, you've worked with pigments. They are the original artist's medium, and the biological world has been using them for over 3 billion years. Pigments can be found in plants, animals, fungi, and even bacteria. Each pigment type serves a purpose, whether it's protection, attraction, communication, or photosynthesis. And behind every vivid red, deep green, or shadowy black is a little molecular drama playing out. Let's start with melanin, one of the most common pigments in the animal kingdom. It's responsible for many of the browns and blacks you see in nature. From the dark fur of a bear to the colour of your own hair and eyes, melanin is a multitasker. Not only does it give colour, it also helps protect cells from the harmful effects of ultraviolet light. That's why your skin produces more melanin when you're exposed to the sun. Hello, suntan. Because it's literally trying to shield your DNA. There are 2 main types of melanin: eumelanin, which gives black and brown tones, and pheomelanin, which provides reddish or yellowish hues. The ratio of these 2 in your hair determines whether you're blonde, brunette, or red-haired. And yes, there's a whole spectrum in between. Melanin is also found in bird feathers, where it can strengthen the structure of the feather in addition to colouring it. So in some cases, darker feathers aren't just more dramatic, they're also more durable. Next, let's dive into the greens, the colour of life itself. The pigment chlorophyll is perhaps the most iconic pigment in the natural world. Found in the chloroplasts of plant cells, chlorophyll is what allows plants to capture sunlight and turn it into energy through photosynthesis. Without chlorophyll, there would be no trees, no grass, no broccoli, and frankly, no breathable air. Chlorophyll absorbs red and blue light from the sun and reflects green, which is why plants appear green to our eyes. But did you know there are actually several kinds of chlorophyll? The two most common are chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B, each with slightly different light absorption properties. This diversity helps plants maximize their light intake across different environments and seasons. Interestingly, the green of chlorophyll is often so dominant in leaves that it masks other pigments. But when the days shorten and temperatures drop in autumn, chlorophyll production slows down and eventually halts. As the green fades, other pigments step forward. This brings us to carotenoids, the pigments behind those glorious fall leaves. Carotenoids reflect yellow, orange, and red light. They are always present in leaves, but usually hidden under all that chlorophyll. When the green fades away, the golds and reds emerge in full splendour. These same pigments are also responsible for the orange of carrots, the yellow of corn, and the bright hues of bell peppers and daffodils. Carotenoids are not just about looking pretty. They play vital roles in both plants and animals. In plants, they help protect against excessive sunlight, acting like a sort of built-in sunscreen. In animals, carotenoids must be obtained through diet, because most animals can't produce them on their own. Flamingos, for example, are famously pink because they consume algae and crustaceans rich in carotenoids. Without that diet, they would be a pale grey. It's as if they're colouring themselves from the inside out. Another pigment family that deserves attention is the anthocyanins. These are the pigments responsible for many of the reds, purples, and blues in plants. Think of blueberries, cherries, and red cabbage. Anthocyanins are water-soluble pigments stored in the vacuoles of plant cells, and they are extremely sensitive to pH. That's why red cabbage juice can be used as a natural pH indicator. It turns pink in acidic solutions and greenish-yellow in alkaline ones. In nature, the shifting colours of anthocyanins can have multiple functions. In flowers, these pigments can attract pollinators like bees and butterflies. In fruits, they make berries more noticeable and appealing to animals that will eat them and disperse the seeds. In leaves, especially young or stressed ones, anthocyanins may act as a form of sunblock or even help deter herbivores. Now let's turn to betalains, a lesser-known but still fascinating pigment group. Found mainly in plants of the Caryophyllales order, like beets and Swiss chard, betalains can produce bright reds and yellows. Unlike anthocyanins, which are common across many plant species, betalins are relatively rare and chemically unrelated to the other pigment families. But when you slice into a beet and see that deep, earthy magenta stain your fingers, you're witnessing betalains in action. Some pigments even have metallic elements at their core. Heme, the pigment that gives blood its red colour, contains iron. It's a component of hemoglobin, which carries oxygen in our blood. Without it, we'd be in serious trouble. In contrast, some sea creatures use copper-based molecules like hemicyanin, which gives their blood a blue or green tint. Octopuses, for example, have blue blood because of this copper-based oxygen transport system. A little less romantic than red hearts perhaps, but just as functional. Animals also use pigments in striking ways beyond survival. Birds of paradise, poison dart frogs, and reef fish all flaunt intense colours that scream for attention. Sometimes these are warning signals, aposematic coloration, letting potential predators know that an animal is toxic, venomous, or just not worth the effort. Bright red and yellow, often a sign to back off. It's like wearing a neon do not touch sign, but far more elegant. In some cases, the colours are used for mimicry. Harmless species may evolve to resemble poisonous ones, adopting the same pigment patterns to gain protection. It's a clever evolutionary shortcut. Why invest in actual toxins when you can just look like trouble? Then there's camouflage, which often involves duller, earthy pigments like browns, greys and greens. These allow animals to blend into their environments, avoiding detection from predators or prey. Many animals can even change the concentration or distribution of pigments in their skin to alter their appearance. Some fish and reptiles can shift their colours slightly for better concealment, while others like cuttlefish use layers of pigment-containing cells called chromatophores to create rapid dynamic changes in pattern and shade. And what about us humans? Well, we've been harvesting, mixing and manufacturing pigments for millennia. From ancient cave paintings made with ochre and charcoal, to medieval manuscripts illuminated with lapis lazuli and gold, to the vast synthetic palette of modern paints, pigments have shaped our culture and our expression. Some pigments, like lead white or mercury-based vermilion, were once prized but later abandoned due to their toxicity. Others, like the elusive true blue, were so rare and expensive that only royalty or religious icons were allowed to wear them. Today pigments are used in everything from food colouring and cosmetics to solar panels and medical imaging. We've even developed pigments that can change colour based on temperature, light exposure or electrical signals, taking a page from nature's own book of tricks. But despite all of our technological advancements, many synthetic pigments still pale in comparison to the vivid, self-renewing colours created by living organisms. A butterfly's wing or a flamingo's feather isn't just coloured, it's alive with meaning, shaped by millions of years of evolution and chemistry. So, the next time you bite into a juicy red apple, marvel at a sunflower's golden crown, or glance at the freckles on your skin, take a moment to appreciate the pigments at play. They're more than just decoration, they're storytellers, protectors and messengers, tiny molecular artists painting the living world with purpose and flair. In a way, pigments are nature's way of speaking. They whisper through petals, flash through feathers, glow in the sea, and blossom on our cheeks. And though we may bottle them, replicate them, and write long textbooks about them, their essence remains rooted in the simple elegance of molecules dancing with light. Camouflage is nature's original magic trick, an evolutionary sleight of hand. One moment, there's a creature before your eyes. The next, it's vanished into bark, sand, coral or shadow. But unlike stage magicians, animals aren't hiding doves up their sleeves. They're changing colours, blending in, and sometimes even impersonating other creatures altogether. The chemistry of camouflage is as rich and fascinating as any predator-prey drama, and it all starts with a pigment, a pattern, or, in some cases, an entire optical illusion. Let's begin with the basics. Camouflage is, at its core, a strategy for avoiding detection. It can be defensive, helping prey hide from predators, or offensive, helping predators sneak up on unsuspecting prey. Sometimes it's both. In a world where the ability to see, or not be seen, can mean the difference between life and death, evolving good camouflage is a matter of survival. But camouflage isn't just about colour, it's about context. A snowshoe hare is stark white in winter, perfectly matched to its snowy environment. But come spring, as the snow melts and the ground darkens, that same white coat becomes a flashing beacon to hungry foxes. That's why snowshoe hares molt. They grow a new brown coat for the summer months, then transition back to white as the days shorten and temperatures drop. The timing is crucial. Molt too early or too late, and you risk standing out at exactly the wrong moment. This seasonal shift is regulated by hormones and daylight, not by the animal consciously observing its surroundings and saying, "Ah, yes, it's brown now." Hormones like melatonin, which respond to changes in daylight, signal the body to alter pigment production. In this case, the pigment in question is melanin, the same one found in our own skin, hair and eyes. Melanin gives the hair its darker summer coat, while a lack of melanin reveals the white fur underneath for winter. This sort of seasonal camouflage is known as disruptive coloration, and it's surprisingly widespread. Arctic foxes do it. Ptarmigans, a type of northern bird, do it. Even the stoat, also called the ermine, transforms from brown to white when the snow falls. It's like nature's version of a costume change. But for some animals, a slow seasonal molt is simply too sluggish. In fast-changing environments like coral reefs, tide pools, or leafy forests, predators and prey need a quicker way to blend in. That's where dynamic camouflage comes in, the ability to change colour on the fly in real time. Enter the chameleon. The chameleon is one of nature's most iconic shapeshifters, famous for its colour-changing skin. But contrary to popular myth, chameleons don't change colour to match whatever background they happen to be standing on. They're not wearing invisibility cloaks. Rather, they use colour to communicate, regulate body temperature, and signal emotional states. Yes, even reptiles have moods. So how does the colour change work? Beneath the chameleon's outer skin lies a layer of cells called iridophores. These cells contain tiny crystals made of guanine, a substance also found in DNA. The arrangement of these crystals can be adjusted by the chameleon, altering how light is reflected off the skin. When the crystals are packed tightly together, they reflect shorter wavelengths like blue. When they're spaced farther apart, they reflect longer wavelengths like red and yellow. By tweaking the spacing of these nanocrystals, the chameleon can produce a full range of colours. It's not just a pigment change, it's structural colour in motion. Of course, chameleons do also have pigment-containing cells called chromatophores, located beneath the iridophores. These cells hold red, yellow, and black pigments that can be expanded or contracted to adjust the overall colour. The layering of chromatophores and iridophores gives chameleons incredibly nuanced control over their appearance, more so than nearly any other land animal. But if the chameleon is the champion of the forest, the true grandmasters of dynamic camouflage live in the sea. Cephalopods, squid, octopuses and cuttlefish take colour change to levels that would make a chameleon blush. They possess 3 types of specialised skin cells that work together to produce extraordinary effects. First, chromatophores contain pigments and can expand or contract to change the skin's colour in milliseconds. Each chromatophore is controlled by a tiny muscle, and they're arranged in patterns like an artist's palette. Beneath the chromatophores are iridophores, similar to those found in chameleons, which reflect light and add iridescent or metallic tones. And even deeper, leucophores act like little mirrors, reflecting ambient light and helping the animal blend into its surroundings with eerie precision. An octopus can not only change its colour, but also its texture by manipulating small muscle-controlled bumps on its skin called papillae. This allows it to mimic the look of coral, rocks, seaweed, or even other animals. It's not just camouflage, it's mimicry, deception, and performance rolled into one. One famous example is the mimic octopus, which can imitate the shape, movement, and colour of other marine animals like lionfish, sea snakes, and flatfish. This isn't just camouflage, it's active impersonation. The octopus chooses its disguise based on the predators nearby. If crabs are a threat, it might mimic a flounder. If fish are hunting, it might impersonate a poisonous sea snake. It's improvisational theatre, but underwater and with a lot more arms. This kind of camouflage is known as active camouflage, and it's mind-blowingly complex. Cephalopods process visual information rapidly and can make decisions about colour and pattern in real time. And yet, here's the twist, they're likely colourblind. That's right, many cephalopods have only one type of photoreceptor in their eyes, meaning they can't perceive colour the way we do. So how do they match their surroundings so well? Scientists think they may use the physical structure of their eyes to detect polarization and contrast instead of hue. They're not seeing colours, they're seeing patterns, brightness levels, and maybe even polarized light, which many animals cannot detect at all. Let's take a moment to appreciate how astonishing that is. These creatures can create vivid, multicolored displays without being able to see in color themselves. It's like painting a masterpiece using only touch. On land, camouflage also comes in subtler forms. Many animals use countershading, a type of camouflage where the top of the animal is darker and the underside is lighter. This gradient helps flatten the appearance of the body and reduce shadows, making the animal harder to detect. Deer, sharks, penguins, and many birds use countershading to blur their outlines and blend into the background, whether viewed from above or below. There's also disruptive coloration, where an animal has bold, contrasting patterns like stripes, spots, or blotches that break up its silhouette. Zebras are a classic example. Their black and white stripes might seem obvious, but in a group the pattern confuses predators, making it difficult to isolate a single individual. For big cats like lions, that delay in targeting can mean the difference between a successful hunt and going hungry. Some animals go even further with mimicry, pretending to be something they're not. The harmless king snake mimics the coloration of the venomous coral snake, gaining protection through association. This is called Batesian mimicry, where a harmless species mimics a harmful one. There's also Mullerian mimicry, where two or more harmful species evolve to look alike, reinforcing the message, "Don't eat us, it's not worth it." And then there are those that camouflage not with colour but with clever behaviour. Some insects like stick bugs or leaf insects look almost exactly like twigs or foliage. Their colour helps, but it's their motion, or lack of it, that seals the deal. They sway gently in the breeze, just like leaves. They freeze when threatened. Their camouflage is part visual, part behavioural, and entirely convincing. Even birds have gotten into the act. The patoo, a South American bird, has plumage that resembles tree bark. During the day, it perches upright on branches with its eyes nearly closed and remains absolutely motionless. It doesn't even blink. It becomes a branch. You could walk right by it without ever realising it was there. That's the gold standard of camouflage, not just blending in, but becoming invisible. Of course, there are limits. No camouflage is perfect, and it's always a trade-off. What hides you from one predator might make you more visible to another. What works in one habitat may fail completely in another, and sometimes camouflage itself becomes a signal. A well-camouflaged animal might reveal a flash of bright colour, a sudden warning or distraction, before vanishing again. This is called startle coloration, and it's especially common in moths, butterflies, and frogs. The idea is to momentarily confuse or frighten a predator with a flash of colour or a fake eye spot, giving the prey just enough time to escape. Humans have borrowed all of these strategies, of course. Military uniforms, hunting gear, stealth aircraft, all inspired by the natural world's lessons in concealment. We even use camouflage in fashion, design, and art, though admittedly less for survival and more for style. But no matter how advanced our technology becomes, nature remains the undisputed master of disguise. From the snowy tundra to the tropical reef, camouflage isn't just a tactic, it's an art form. It is the living brushstroke of evolution, a moving canvas shaped by need, survival, and light. So next time you walk through a forest or stroll along a shoreline, take a closer look. That rock might be a frog, that leaf might be a moth, and that shadow on the sea floor, it might just be watching you back. Imagine walking along a moonlit beach. The waves are gentle, the air is cool, and everything seems quiet until you notice it. A faint shimmer in the water, a flicker. Then, as your foot brushes against the surf, the sea lights up in electric blue, as if you've stepped into a dream. You're not imagining things. You've just witnessed one of nature's most enchanting spectacles, bioluminescence. But that's not the only way nature glows. Some creatures don't produce their own light, but instead absorb certain types of light, like ultraviolet, and re-emit it at a different wavelength. This phenomenon is called biofluorescence. While bioluminescence is an internal glow, biofluorescence is more like nature's version of a glow stick under a black light. Both are magical, both are real, and both rely on chemistry so elegant it might just keep you awake wondering about it all night. Let's begin with bioluminescence, the ability of living organisms to produce light through a chemical reaction. It's not rare. In fact, it's surprisingly common. More than 3/4 of all known deep-sea animals are bioluminescent, as are some insects, fungi, bacteria, and marine plankton. So how does it work? The basic chemistry involves a molecule called luciferin, an enzyme called luciferase, oxygen, and usually some sort of energy source like ATP. When luciferin reacts with oxygen in the presence of luciferase, it gets excited, literally. The resulting high-energy intermediate quickly returns to a stable state by releasing energy as light. That's it. A tiny, elegant spark of life. No fire, no heat, just a cold glow. Because bioluminescence doesn't generate much heat, it's sometimes referred to as cold light, and it's incredibly efficient. Nearly all of the energy is converted to visible light. That's better than even the best human-made light bulbs. Different organisms have different kinds of luciferin. Some marine animals get it from their diet, while others produce it themselves. There are also different colours of bioluminescence depending on the chemistry involved. In the deep sea, blue is the most common colour since it travels farthest through water. Red and green are rarer, but they do occur, often in shallower environments or among certain species with specialised visual systems. Let's take a look at some glowing celebrities in the animal kingdom. Perhaps the most famous is the firefly. These charming little beetles light up summer evenings around the world, their flashing signals floating like sparks through the air. But those flashes aren't just for decoration, they're part of a complex communication system. Fireflies use their light to attract mates, and each species has its own signature pattern of blinking. Some flash in synchrony, like little airborne Christmas lights. Others use a more stealthy signal, hoping to find a partner without alerting predators. Of course, not everyone who flashes is looking for love. Some species of fireflies mimic the flashing patterns of other species to lure males in, only to eat them. Romance, it seems, can be risky business. In the ocean, bioluminescence becomes even more diverse and dramatic. One of the most mesmerizing examples is the comb jelly, or ctenophore. Though they look like jellyfish, they belong to a different group altogether. Many comb jellies possess rows of tiny beating cilia that diffract light into shimmering rainbows. Some species also glow from within, using bioluminescence to deter predators or attract prey. Then there's the anglerfish, a creature as famous for its appearance as its glow. In the inky darkness of the deep sea, the anglerfish dangles a glowing lure from its head, like a tiny fishing rod. Unsuspecting fish swim toward the light, mistaking it for food, only to find themselves becoming food. It's a grim but effective strategy. Many deep-sea creatures use bioluminescence in similarly clever ways. Some use it for camouflage in a process called counter-illumination, where the light they emit from their bellies matches the faint light filtering down from the surface. This helps them hide their silhouettes from predators swimming below. Others use sudden flashes to startle or confuse attackers, or to illuminate prey in the darkness. The dragonfish, for example, can produce red bioluminescence, a rare trick in the deep sea, and even has specialised eyes to see it. This gives it a stealth advantage. To most creatures, red light is invisible, but the dragonfish can see and hunt in its own private wavelength. Bioluminescence isn't limited to animals. Certain fungi glow with a soft green light, often found on rotting wood in humid forests. This glow, sometimes called foxfire, has inspired stories and superstitions for centuries. Scientists believe that the light may help attract insects, which then disperse the fungi's spores, like glowing billboards for reproduction. And then there are the glowing waves. If you've ever seen a beach sparkle at night, you may have encountered bioluminescent plankton. These microscopic organisms, including some dinoflagellates, emit light when disturbed. By waves, by swimmers, or by footsteps along the sand. The glow lasts only a second or two, but in large numbers it can light up entire bays. It's not just beautiful, it's part of the organism's defense system. The flash may startle predators, or it might act as a burglar alarm, drawing larger predators to eat whatever is trying to eat the plankton. A clever if risky strategy. Now let's switch gears and talk about biofluorescence, which is not the same as bioluminescence, though the two are often confused. In biofluorescence, organisms absorb high-energy light, usually ultraviolet, and re-emit it at a lower energy and longer wavelength, typically green, orange, or red. Unlike bioluminescence, which is a self-powered light source, biofluorescence requires an external light source to charge it. Under normal daylight it may go unnoticed, but under ultraviolet light, biofluorescent organisms glow like living neon signs. This phenomenon is surprisingly common, especially in marine environments. Many fish, corals, sea turtles, and even sharks exhibit biofluorescence. One of the most famous examples is the Hawaiian bobtail squid, which has both bioluminescent and biofluorescent properties. It uses symbiotic bacteria to produce its own light, while also glowing under certain wavelengths. One of the earliest clues to the widespread nature of biofluorescence in marine life came from scientists snorkeling at night with UV flashlights. Suddenly, fish that looked completely ordinary during the day glowed with vibrant colours. Patterns that had been invisible were now ablaze with stripes, spots, and halos. It was as if a secret language had been illuminated. So what's the point? Scientists are still uncovering the functions of biofluorescence, but several theories have emerged. It may help with communication, especially in dim environments where visible light is scarce. It could serve as camouflage by blending with biofluorescent corals or sediments. Or it might be used to lure prey, just as in bioluminescence. Some species even have special yellow filters in their eyes that allow them to see fluorescent light better than humans can. To us, the reef might seem colourful enough already, but to some fish, it's practically a glowing metropolis. Outside the ocean, biofluorescence is found in some amphibians, reptiles, birds, and even mammals. Yes, mammals. Researchers have discovered that flying squirrels fluoresce a bubblegum pink under ultraviolet light. Platypuses do it too. Why? No one really knows. It may be an evolutionary quirk, a relic of a once useful trait, or it might serve a subtle purpose we haven't yet understood. Either way, it's a good reminder that nature still holds plenty of mysteries, and let's not forget the practical applications. Scientists have harnessed glowing proteins from jellyfish and other organisms to revolutionize medical research. The green fluorescent protein, or GFP, has been used as a biological marker in thousands of experiments. It allows scientists to track gene expression, trace cellular pathways, and even watch neurons fire in real time. Without these glowing proteins, we would know far less about the inner workings of life. There's something deeply poetic about this. Molecules evolved for communication, camouflage, or hunting in the deep sea are now being used to peer into the human brain, to track cancer cells, to study development at the cellular level. What began as a survival tool has become a tool for understanding. And still, despite all this knowledge, the experience of seeing something glow in the dark retains its wonder. There is something ancient and mysterious about light that comes from life. It feels like a secret signal, a whisper from the deep, the forest or the stars. Whether it's a firefly blinking in a summer field or a jellyfish pulsing in the abyss, bioluminescence reminds us that life is not just complex but luminous. So the next time you find yourself near the ocean at night, or walking under blacklight art, or watching the flicker of a firefly, pause for a moment. You're not just seeing light, you're seeing chemistry and biology come together in perfect harmony. A dance of molecules, an ancient language glowing just for you. And if it keeps you awake with wonder, well, at least you'll have something beautiful to think about. If you were to shrink down to the size of a single cell and take a leisurely stroll through the microscopic world, you'd find that even at that scale, nature doesn't skimp on flair. In fact, some of the most unexpected sources of vivid colour and visual complexity come from the tiniest life forms, microorganisms. From bacteria and algae to single-celled fungi, the microbial realm is home to a vibrant, swirling palette of hues, many of which serve critical functions far beyond aesthetics. These microscopic creatures don't worry about fashion or interior design. For them, colour is chemistry, it's survival, it's strategy, and sometimes It's just a strange and beautiful accident of biochemistry. Let's start with the simplest and arguably the most ancient of the colourful microbes, bacteria. Many types of bacteria produce pigments, and these pigments can range from dazzling blues and greens to deep reds, purples, and even jet black. These colours aren't just pretty, they're often crucial to the bacteria's survival. Take for instance cyanobacteria, also known as blue-green algae. Despite their misleading nickname, these organisms are bacteria, not algae, and they've been around for at least 2.5 billion years. Yes, billion, with a B. Cyanobacteria are photosynthetic, meaning they use sunlight to make energy, much like plants. They're among the first organisms to do so, and they're responsible for one of the most important events in Earth's history, the Great Oxygenation Event. Before cyanobacteria got to work, Earth's atmosphere had almost no oxygen, but as they photosynthesized, they began releasing oxygen as a byproduct. Over millions of years, this process transformed the planet, allowing aerobic organisms, creatures like us, to eventually evolve. So the next time you take a deep breath, remember to thank the blue-green bacteria. The pigment responsible for their colour is called phycocyanin, which absorbs orange and red light while reflecting blue and green. It's a light-harvesting pigment that helps the bacteria absorb more wavelengths of sunlight, particularly in water where red light doesn't penetrate well. That vivid teal or turquoise hue is more than just eye-catching. It's a carefully evolved adaptation to maximize solar energy in underwater environments, but cyanobacteria are just the beginning. Let's talk about Chromobacterium violaceum, a bacterium known for its rich violet colour. This striking appearance comes from a pigment called violacin, which the bacteria produce to protect themselves from ultraviolet light and oxidative stress. Violacin also has antimicrobial properties, meaning it helps these bacteria compete against other microbes in their environment. A built-in sunscreen and antibiotic, all in one dazzling purple package. Then there's Serratia marquescens, a reddish-pink bacterium often found in damp bathrooms, on soap scum or tile grout. Its pigment, called prodigiosin, is more than just a splash of colour in your shower. Prodigiosin may help the bacterium survive in stressful environments, possibly by regulating the flow of ions across its membrane or by interfering with the metabolism of competing organisms. And while we're talking about bathrooms, let's mention Xanthinobacterium lividum, a blue-violet bacterium that produces an antimicrobial compound, also linked to its pigment. This bacterium has even shown potential in protecting amphibians from chytrid fungus, a deadly disease wiping out frog populations worldwide. In this case, colour could literally be the difference between extinction and survival. Some bacteria are even radioactive survivors. In places like Chernobyl and Fukushima, scientists have discovered radiotrophic fungi, organisms that don't just tolerate radiation, but seem to thrive in it. Many of these fungi are darkly pigmented, often black, due to high concentrations of melanin. Yes, the same pigment found in your skin is helping these microscopic life forms survive in environments that would be lethal to almost everything else. Melanin is an excellent shield against ionizing radiation, absorbing and dissipating harmful energy before it can damage the organism's DNA. In the case of these fungi, melanin might also be helping them capture radiation as a form of usable energy, like photosynthesis, but for gamma rays. It's not quite X-ray cuisine, but it's as close to alien life as you're likely to find on Earth. Now, let's head to the oceans, where colour becomes even more essential and more surreal. Phytoplankton are the floating forests of the sea. These microscopic plant-like organisms drift with the currents, converting sunlight into energy through photosynthesis. Though small, they are responsible for producing about half of the oxygen on Earth. That's right. Every second breath you take likely comes from phytoplankton. One of the most prominent groups of phytoplankton is the diatoms. These are beautiful, glass-walled creatures with intricate silica shells and golden brown hues, thanks to a pigment called fucoxanthin. This pigment allows them to absorb blue and green light more efficiently in deep or murky water, where red light doesn't reach. The result? A rusty, bronzed shimmer when observed en masse. Sometimes, when phytoplankton bloom in large numbers, the water changes colour dramatically. These algal blooms can turn lakes or oceans green, red, or even purple. While some blooms are harmless or even beneficial, others can be toxic, releasing compounds that harm marine life and humans alike. The infamous red tide, for instance, is caused by certain dinoflagellates producing reddish pigments and potent neurotoxins. Then there are the glowing plankton. As we explored in the last chapter, some dinoflagellates produce bioluminescence, flashing blue or green when disturbed, but others also fluoresce under ultraviolet light, revealing glowing reds, greens and oranges that would be invisible otherwise. These microscopic light shows aren't just beautiful, they're thought to play roles in predator evasion, communication and environmental sensing. But colour in the microbial world doesn't always stem from light. Sometimes it's a byproduct of biochemistry. For example, many soil-dwelling bacteria produce pigments as part of their metabolic waste. These pigments can signal to competitors, deter predators, or simply result from enzymatic pathways that serve other purposes. In a sense, microbes don't always intend to be colourful. It just happens to be a side effect of their biochemistry, like a byproduct that says, "Hello, I'm here, and I'm doing something complicated." Some microbes even use colour as a lure. Slime moulds, for example, aren't technically bacteria or fungi, but they produce vividly coloured fruiting bodies, often bright yellow, orange, or red. These colours may help attract insects or other small animals to aid in spore dispersal, much like flowering plants rely on bees or birds. And while we're talking about fungi, it's worth noting that many mushrooms owe their colours to pigments produced for defence or environmental adaptation. Amanita muscaria, the iconic red and white fairy tale mushroom, gets its bright colour from a cocktail of pigments and toxins that act as a warning. Bright colours in fungi, like in animals, often mean, "Do not eat me, it won't end well." Other fungi go the opposite direction, using dark pigments like melanin to shield against UV radiation, drought, or extreme temperatures. These survival strategies are particularly common in fungi that colonize high-altitude environments, deserts, or even space-exposed surfaces on the International Space Station. Yes, really. Some pigmented fungi have been found to survive the vacuum and radiation of outer space. Colour, it turns out, is a form of armour. So what do all these microbial colours have in common? They're not for decoration. They're tools, shields, signals, and sometimes just quirks of evolution. Whether glowing in the deep ocean, surviving on a nuclear reactor wall, or floating invisibly through the air, these tiny organisms are painted with meaning. There's something humbling about this. We tend to think of colour as something grand and visible, peacock feathers, coral reefs, autumn leaves. But beneath our feet, inside our water, and even on our own skin, microscopic organisms are performing chemical dances, flickering with hues that tell stories of survival, adaptation, and ancient evolutionary struggles. In recent years, scientists have begun exploring how we can harness microbial pigments for human use. Some of these pigments are being studied as natural food dyes, alternatives to synthetic chemicals that come with health and environmental concerns. Others are being developed as indicators in medical diagnostics, changing colour in the presence of certain compounds or infections. Some even show promise in renewable energy, acting as natural light harvesters for solar cells. And of course, there's art. Artists and designers are increasingly turning to bacteria and fungi as living paintbrushes, growing patterns on agar plates, sculpting with colonies, and capturing the ephemeral beauty of biological colour. In these works, the microbial world isn't just functional, it's expressive. So next time you look at a mouldy orange, a green pond, or a petri dish in a lab, don't wrinkle your nose too quickly. You might be staring at a colour more ancient than any painting, more adaptive than any camouflage, and more radiant than we've yet learned to see. Even in the smallest forms of life, colour finds a way. reminding us that beauty doesn't always need to be big to be bold. In nature, colour isn't just about beauty, it's about meaning. For many creatures, colour is a language, a form of non-verbal communication far older than any spoken word. From the electric blues of courting birds to the warning reds of venomous frogs, the animal kingdom is alive with signals written in hues and patterns. These colours can shout, whisper, deceive, or seduce, and they often do so with startling clarity. Let's begin with one of the most important roles of colour in the animal world: courtship. In many species, vibrant colours are used to attract mates. These displays often go far beyond mere visual appeal. They serve as signals of health, strength, and good genetics. A brightly coloured individual is essentially saying, "Look at me. I'm strong, I'm healthy, and I'd make a great parent." Take birds, for example. The male peacock's resplendent train of iridescent feathers is one of the most iconic courtship displays in nature. Each shimmering eye on his tail fan is created through structural colour, tiny microscopic arrangements that reflect light in dazzling ways. But those feathers aren't just for show. Growing and maintaining them is energetically expensive, and carrying such an enormous tail can make flying and escaping predators more difficult. So when a peahen sees a male flaunting his fully fanned train, she doesn't just see beauty, she sees a survivor. If he can flourish despite the burden of his plumage, he must be doing something right. This idea is part of what scientists call honest signalling. In biology, a signal is considered honest if it's costly to produce and difficult to fake. Think of it like a natural vetting process. Only the healthiest individuals can afford the brightest colours, the biggest antlers, or the longest songs. If a signal is too easy to fake, it stops being useful and evolution tends to weed it out. But if it reliably communicates something important, like fitness or fertility, it gets reinforced over generations. Another brilliant example of colour in courtship comes from birds of paradise, found in New Guinea and parts of Australia. These birds are known for their surreal feathers, strange dances, and otherworldly colours. Males will spend hours cleaning and preparing their display areas, clearing leaves, polishing branches, and positioning themselves under just the right patch of sunlight. When a female arrives, the show begins. Feathers unfurl like parasols, heads bob, feet shuffle, and through it all, the male's colours catch the light in precisely the way they're designed to, dazzling and hypnotic. But it's not just birds that use colour to flirt. Many fish also engage in colour-based courtship. The male three-spined stickleback, for instance, develops a bright red belly during mating season. This crimson splash signals to females that he's ready to spawn, and that he's healthy and able to care for the nest he'll build. Some insects and reptiles develop breeding colours as well, often appearing more vibrant or showing off new patterns for just a few short weeks each year. Even humans aren't immune to the effects of colour in attraction. Studies have shown that people may perceive others as more attractive when they wear certain colours, red in particular. Whether this is due to cultural associations or deeper biological roots is still up for debate. But it's clear that our brains, like those of many animals, are tuned to notice colour in social contexts. Now, if colour can seduce, it can also warn. Welcome to the world of aposematism, a form of signalling where bright, bold colours tell would-be predators, "Don't eat me, I'm poisonous, venomous, or just plain unpleasant." Poison dart frogs are the poster children for this strategy. Found in the rainforests of Central and South America, these tiny amphibians come in a kaleidoscope of neon hues: blue, yellow, orange, green, and red. Their skin secretes potent toxins, some of which are deadly even in small doses. But the frogs don't try to hide. They strut their colours like danger signs, and predators learn quickly. Bright frog equals bad idea. It's a surprisingly effective system. Once a predator has a bad experience with a vividly coloured creature, it tends to avoid anything that looks similar in the future. This is good news not only for the poisonous animals themselves, but also for their evolutionary copycats. Which brings us to mimicry. There are two main types of mimicry relevant to our colourful tale. The first is called Batesian mimicry, named after the naturalist Henry Walter Bates. In this form, a harmless species evolves to resemble a harmful or unpalatable one. By mimicking the warning colours of a toxic cousin, the mimic can avoid being eaten, even though it doesn't actually pose any threat. A classic example is the relationship between the coral snake and the king snake. The venomous coral snake has a distinctive pattern of red, yellow and black bands. The non-venomous king snake sports a very similar pattern, especially in regions where the two overlap. Predators who've had an unpleasant encounter with a coral snake, or who simply don't want to risk it, often steer clear of the look-alike king snake as well. The second form is Müllerian mimicry, where two or more harmful species evolve to resemble each other. This creates a kind of shared branding strategy. The more predators that learn to avoid one of them, the safer all the mimics become. Everyone benefits, like businesses in a dangerous neighbourhood agreeing to hang the same "beware of dog" sign. Another subtle use of colour in the animal world is camouflage with a twist. Some creatures employ colours not to blend in perfectly, but to confuse or mislead. This is known as disruptive coloration. Zebras are a classic example. Their bold black and white stripes don't match any particular background. But when they move as a group, the overlapping stripes make it difficult for predators to isolate and target a single individual. It's the visual equivalent of trying to follow one bee in a buzzing swarm. Some fish, like certain species of butterfly fish, have dark spots near their tails and stripes across their eyes. This makes it hard for predators to determine which end is which, and which way the fish might dart. In the split-second decisions of underwater survival, that extra half-second of confusion can be the difference between escape and lunch. Colour also plays a major role in intraspecies communication. That is, communication between members of the same species. Many animals can read subtle shifts in hue or brightness that indicate mood, health, or intent. In lizards, for instance, the colour of throat fans or dewlaps can signal dominance, territorial boundaries, or readiness to mate. In cephalopods like octopuses and cuttlefish, skin colour can change in real time to reflect emotions such as fear, aggression, or curiosity. Some birds use colour patches not only for courtship, but also to signal dominance within a social group. The brightness of a patch might indicate rank, maturity, or fighting ability. For example, in house sparrows, the size of the black bib on a male's chest can influence how other birds treat him. A bigger bib might mean more deference, or more challenges, depending on the social context. Colour can even function as a kind of social contract. In some species of wasps, individuals have facial patterns that signal their fighting ability. If a wasp bluffs, displaying the colours of a strong fighter without actually being one, it risks getting punished by others. Over time, honesty is enforced through social learning, and colour becomes a trusted badge of identity. But colour isn't always about standing out. Sometimes it's about fitting in. Young animals often have duller colours than adults, helping them avoid attention while they're still vulnerable. As they grow and mature, their colours may brighten, signalling their readiness to join the social and reproductive games of adulthood. And finally, we can't forget one of the most haunting uses of colour in communication: startle displays. Some moths and butterflies have eye spots on their wings that remain hidden until a predator gets too close. When threatened, the insect flares its wings, revealing what looks like a staring pair of eyes. This sudden display can shock or confuse the predator just long enough for the prey to escape. It's a last-ditch effort, a dramatic visual shout. Some animals take this further. Certain frogs, lizards, and fish have brightly coloured body parts they keep hidden until the moment they need to flash a warning. A dull-looking lizard might suddenly reveal a bright blue tongue or a fiery red throat. A frog might expose vivid orange legs when leaping away. These bursts of colour act as psychological smoke bombs, disorienting and alarming to attackers. In the end, the colours of animal communication are as varied as the animals themselves. They're loud and subtle, honest and deceptive, beautiful and functional. They can whisper sweet nothings or scream "stay away," lure mates or terrify predators. And unlike the words we speak, these colours are understood across species, across ecosystems, across millions of years of evolution. So the next time you see a frog glowing like a traffic light or a bird with feathers that catch the sun just right, know that you're not just seeing a random splash of colour, you're witnessing a message, carefully crafted by evolution and delivered with perfect visual grammar. A signal, a story, a statement, spoken without a single sound. Colour, as we've seen, is not simply a matter of aesthetics in nature. It's function layered with function, written in chemistry, shaped by survival. But colour isn't frozen in time, it evolves. Like wings, teeth, or camouflage, colour itself is a trait shaped by millions of years of trial and error, adaptation, and environmental change. In this chapter, we'll explore how colour shifts over generations, how it emerges and disappears, and how evolutionary forces like natural selection, sexual selection, and even extinction leave their fingerprints on the hues we see today. Let's begin with a question that may seem simple on the surface. Why are some animals colourful and others not? The answer depends on a mix of visibility and vulnerability. If you're a predator hunting in open terrain, bold markings may help you intimidate competitors or confuse prey. If you're prey, however, being visible can be a fatal liability, unless your bright colours serve a very specific function, like warning predators of your toxicity. For animals that rely on stealth, camouflage usually wins out. These pressures help explain why certain colour traits survive while others disappear. Let's take a bird species that lives in dense forest. Over time, if brighter individuals are more likely to be spotted and eaten by predators, their genes for vivid colouring may not pass on. Gradually, the population may become more uniformly dull or greenish, better suited to blending into the foliage. But if that same species moves into a new environment, say, an open savanna where display matters more than concealment, different forces might be at play. In this case, colourful males might attract more mates and have more offspring. The genes for brightness spread, and within a few dozen generations, what was once a cryptic forest bird may become a flamboyant show-off. This process is a core principle of natural selection, first described by Charles Darwin. Traits that improve survival or reproduction are more likely to be passed on. But when it comes to colour, there's another important force at work: sexual selection. Sexual selection happens when certain traits evolve not because they help an animal survive, but because they help it reproduce. A peacock's tail doesn't make it better at escaping predators. In fact, it probably makes that harder. But it makes the male peacock more attractive to females, and that's enough. If a trait helps you leave more descendants, it sticks around. Sometimes sexual selection can lead to what's called runaway selection, a kind of evolutionary feedback loop. Imagine that females in a species slightly prefer redder males. Over time, redder males have more babies. Among those babies, both the genes for red colouring and the genes for preferring red get passed down. If this continues, you can end up with extremely red males and extremely choosy females, a dynamic that exaggerates the trait generation after generation. This may eventually plateau if the trait becomes too costly or risky, but while it lasts, it can produce some of the most extravagant colorations in nature. Yet evolution isn't just about gaining colour, it's also about losing it. Take cave-dwelling animals, for instance. In the lightless depths of underground caves, where sight is useless and colour offers no advantage, many creatures have become ghostly pale. Some fish, salamanders, and insects that live in caves lack pigment entirely. Their skin is translucent, their eyes vestigial or absent, and their appearance ethereal, as if they were carved from candle wax. This is called regressive evolution, the gradual loss of a trait that no longer serves a purpose. Pigment production requires energy. If a population lives in complete darkness, individuals that stop investing energy in colour may actually be more efficient, and over time those genes become more common. Interestingly, some of these colour-lost creatures still retain the genes for pigment, they just don't express them anymore. It's as if evolution pressed the mute button, not the delete key. In theory, if the environment changed and pigment became useful again, those dormant pathways might switch back on. Another case of colour loss appears in domesticated animals. Think of white mice, pale pigeons, or albino snakes. Selective breeding by humans often emphasises traits like novelty or docility, and because these environments are protected from predators, natural selection pressures that would normally eliminate pale or conspicuous animals are relaxed. In nature, a bright white rabbit might stand out like a spotlight and become an easy target. In a rabbit hutch, however, it can thrive and pass on its genes, simply because we like how it looks. And then there are the stories colour leaves behind, traces in stone, in bone, in the fossil record. For a long time, scientists believed it was impossible to know what colours extinct animals were. Fossils, after all, preserve bone, not feathers or skin. But that's changed in recent years thanks to breakthroughs in paleocolour science. Researchers discovered that fossilized feathers sometimes preserve microscopic structures called melanosomes, tiny packets of pigment found in modern bird feathers. By comparing the shape and arrangement of melanosomes in fossils to those in living birds, scientists can make educated guesses about the colours of prehistoric creatures. For instance, a small feathered dinosaur called Anchiornis is now believed to have had a black and white body with a rusty red crest. Another species, Sinosauropteryx, may have had a raccoon-like facial mask and a banded tail. It's still early days, but the idea that we can see the colours of animals extinct for over 100 million years is as exciting as it is humbling. Imagine realising that the dinosaurs of your childhood books, all olive green and leathery brown, may have actually been striped, spotted, or flamboyantly feathered. Of course, not all colour evolution is obvious. Sometimes it's microscopic, changes in the chemistry of pigment molecules, or shifts in how light interacts with surface structures. One fascinating example comes from butterflies. Some species of butterflies evolve not by changing their pigments, but by altering the nanostructure of their wing scales. These changes shift how the wings reflect and scatter light, resulting in new colours without any new chemicals. Structural colour, unlike pigment-based colour, is highly tunable. A few nanometers difference in spacing can produce a completely different hue. This flexibility means that butterflies can evolve new colours rapidly, responding to changes in habitat, climate, or predators. In one study, researchers found that butterfly wing colours adapted to the local environment within a few dozen generations. Evolution isn't just powerful, it can be fast. But sometimes colour changes for reasons that are hard to explain. Some animals are polymorphic, meaning individuals of the same species come in different colours. Think of the peppered moth, a famous example of evolution in action. In pre-industrial England, most peppered moths were light-coloured, camouflaged against lichen-covered trees. But when industrial pollution blackened the trees with soot, a dark-coloured variant became more common, better camouflaged, and thus more likely to survive. After pollution was reduced in the late 20th century, the lighter form made a comeback. The gene responsible for this colour change has been identified, and its rise and fall provide a textbook example of natural selection responding to environmental pressures. But in other polymorphic species, the reasons aren't so clear. Some damselflies, for instance, have females that come in several distinct colour forms. These variations may relate to mate avoidance, social signalling, or thermal regulation. But scientists are still investigating it. That's the thing about colour. It's endlessly multifunctional and often surprising. What starts as one function, camouflage say, can evolve into another, like mate attraction. A pigment that began as a sunscreen might become a warning signal. A structural colour that once helped a butterfly blend into the sky might end up helping it stand out against flowers. Evolution doesn't plan, it repurposes, it edits, revises, and reshapes. It takes a spare feather and makes a fan. It takes a bit of melanin and makes a mask. It takes a splash of red and turns it into a language, a lure, or a warning, and sometimes it just plays. Because while evolution is governed by survival and reproduction, it's also full of whimsy. There's no rule saying a parrot has to be green, or that a beetle has to shine. Some traits evolve simply because they're pleasing to the eye, to the mate, or to the moment. So the next time you see a sunset moth flutter by, its wings aglow with impossible colours, remember, you're witnessing millions of years of refinement, yes, but also a little bit of evolutionary art. A collaboration between biology, environment, and chance, painted one gene at a time. Blue. It's the colour of clear skies and deep oceans, of denim jeans and distant planets. It's a colour we often take for granted. Calming, cool, serene. But here's the twist. In nature, blue is surprisingly rare. Not just in animals, but across the entire biological world. Of all the vivid hues found in flowers, feathers, and fish, blue is among the most elusive. And when it does appear, it's often not the result of pigment at all, but a carefully orchestrated illusion. Let's take a closer look at this curious colour, its chemistry, its illusions, and the very peculiar ways that nature cheats its way to blue. To understand just how unusual blue is, we first need to talk about how colour is made in living things. As you may recall from earlier chapters, most colours in nature are the result of pigments, molecules that absorb some wavelengths of light and reflect others. Carotenoids, for example, give us oranges and reds. Chlorophyll gives us green. Melanin creates blacks and browns. But blue pigments are astonishingly rare in the natural world. In fact, there are no known blue pigments in the feathers of any bird. None. When we see a bluebird, a blue jay, or a peacock shimmering with cerulean brilliance, we're not looking at pigment, we're looking at physics. Most of the blues in animal life come from structural colour. This is when microscopic structures, like layers, lattices or ridges, interact with light in such a way that they selectively reflect certain wavelengths. In the case of blue, these nanostructures reflect shorter, high-energy wavelengths and scatter the rest. Take the blue morpho butterfly. Its wings appear bright, almost metallic blue, but if you were to grind one into dust, please don't. It would look dull and brownish. That's because the colour isn't in the material itself, but in the way the wings' tiny scales are arranged. Under a microscope, you'd see a forest of ridged structures that manipulate light like a prism or a diffraction grating. The spacing of these ridges is just right to reflect blue wavelengths while cancelling others. It's a sculpted light show, built at the nanoscale. Similarly, the vibrant blue of a peacock's neck or a jay's feathers comes from microscopic air pockets within the keratin of the feather. These air pockets scatter light through interference, producing that deep, shifting blue. The effect is incredibly efficient, and because it's based on structure rather than chemistry, it doesn't fade the way pigments do. This use of structural colour means that blue in nature often comes with another trait, iridescence. Because the colour depends on the angle of light and the viewer's position, it can shift and shimmer as the animal moves. That's why blue morpho butterflies seem to flash as they fly through the forest. They're not just moving through space, they're playing with light. There are a few rare examples of true blue pigments in plants. One of the best known is delphinidin, an anthocyanin found in some flowers like cornflowers, hydrangeas and delphiniums. But even here, the story is complicated. The actual colour of these flowers depends not just on the presence of delphinidin, but also on the pH of the cell sap, the presence of metal ions like aluminum or iron, and the structure of the plant's vacuoles. In fact, hydrangeas can change colour entirely depending on the soil's pH. Acidic soil leads to blue flowers, while alkaline soil shifts them toward pink. It's not a pigment swap. It's a change in the chemical environment that alters how the pigment interacts with light. In that sense, even the bluest flowers are balancing on a knife's edge of chemistry. And then there are the blue animals that aren't cheating with structure. Those that really do have blue pigment. They are rare, but they exist. One example is the mandarin dragonet, a small, extravagantly coloured fish from the Pacific Ocean. Its vibrant blues come from a pigment, not just structure, though the exact details are still being studied. Another is the blue poison dart frog, which does appear blue due to a combination of pigmentation and light scattering. In both cases, these animals are exceptions to the rule. But if blue is so rare, why do we see it so often? Part of the answer lies in our brains. Humans are particularly sensitive to blue light. We have 3 types of cone cells in our eyes that detect colour, one tuned to red, one to green, and one to blue. These cones allow us to perceive a full spectrum of colours by blending the input. Blue is at the short wavelength end of the visible spectrum, just above ultraviolet, which we can't see. Because blue stands out strongly to our visual system, even small amounts can appear vivid and dominant. Our brains also make assumptions about blue. We associate it with the sky and water, both of which cover vast areas of our environment. But interestingly, the blue of the sky and ocean isn't due to pigment either. The sky is blue because of Rayleigh scattering. Shorter blue wavelengths scatter more than red ones when sunlight hits air molecules. The ocean appears blue because it reflects the sky, and because water absorbs red light more than blue. So even the blueness of our planet is, in a way, an illusion of light physics. What about ancient humans? Did they notice the rarity of blue? It turns out yes, and in fascinating ways. Linguists have long studied how different cultures develop words for colours, and blue is almost always one of the last to appear. In many ancient texts, such as Homer's The Odyssey, the sea is described not as blue, but as wine dark. The Egyptians were among the first to create a synthetic blue pigment, known as Egyptian blue, over 4,000 years ago. It was a prized and costly colour, used in art, decoration and ceremonial items. Its rarity gave it symbolic power. Blue was associated with the heavens, with divinity, and with precious things. That symbolism has carried through into modern times. In many cultures, blue is associated with peace, wisdom, trust, and loyalty. It is used in uniforms and flags, in branding and design, in everything from religious iconography to sports teams. But despite all this cultural weight, nature still holds blue close to its chest. Even among mammals, true blue is nearly non-existent. You'll find reddish fur, brown, black, white, and even yellowish tones. But blue fur? Not really. Some monkeys and mandrills have blue skin on their faces or rear ends, but again, this is usually a structural effect. The skin surface scatters light in a way that makes it appear blue. No blue pigment is involved. Among birds and insects, however, blue reigns supreme, precisely because of structural colour. Evolution has exploited the physics of light to sidestep the biochemical challenge of making blue pigment. It's a hack, an elegant workaround, and it's one of the reasons blue is both rare and unforgettable. And what about us? Our eyes are often blue, at least in some people. But once again, it's an illusion. Human eye colour is determined by the amount and distribution of melanin in the iris. Blue eyes don't contain blue pigment. Instead, they have low melanin, and the scattering of light within the iris, much like Rayleigh scattering in the sky, creates the perception of blue. It's a trick of light and structure, not dye. In a way, this makes blue all the more magical. It is a colour that often doesn't exist in the material. It emerges from the interaction between structure and light, between physics and perception. It's a collaboration between biology and physics, played out in feathers, scales, wings and petals. So the next time you see a blue jay on a branch, or a butterfly dancing through the sunlight, remember that you're witnessing a kind of visual alchemy. The blue is not in the bird, not in the butterfly. It is in the light, the angle, the arrangement. It's in your eyes, it's in your brain. It is everywhere, and yet, biologically speaking, almost nowhere. Blue is the colour that nature had to invent twice, once in structure and again in meaning. And maybe that's why we love it so much. because it reminds us that even in a world of atoms and molecules, there's still room for illusion, mystery, and a little sleight of hand. When we think of colourful things in nature, it's often flowers that come to mind first. From the deep violet of a pansy to the golden blaze of a sunflower, the plant kingdom seems to have an almost infinite palette at its disposal. But plant coloration isn't just there to be admired. Every hue, every shift in shade plays a role. Flowers attract pollinators, leaves capture light, fruits entice animals to spread seeds. Even the fading reds and oranges of autumn have their purpose. In this chapter, we'll step into the rich, vibrant world of plant pigments and explore how and why plants paint themselves with such care. Let's begin with the foundation of nearly all plant colour, chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is the molecule that allows plants to harness sunlight and turn it into energy through photosynthesis. Without it, life on Earth as we know it would not exist. It's what makes grass green, trees leafy, and algae bloom. There are actually several forms of chlorophyll, but the most common are chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B, both of which absorb light most strongly in the red and blue parts of the spectrum while reflecting green. That's why most leaves appear green to our eyes. But chlorophyll does more than just colour leaves. It tells us a lot about a plant's health. A lush, green leaf is full of chlorophyll and working efficiently. When a plant becomes stressed due to drought, disease, or damage, chlorophyll breaks down, and other pigments underneath begin to show. That's when yellows, reds, and purples emerge, revealing colours that were always there, just hidden by green dominance. Those hidden pigments are mostly carotenoids and anthocyanins. Carotenoids are a large class of pigments that produce yellow, orange, and red colours. You'll find them in carrots, pumpkins, corn, and marigolds. In fact, the name carotenoid comes from carota, the Latin word for carrot. Like chlorophyll, carotenoids also help in photosynthesis by capturing light energy and protecting plants from the harmful effects of excessive light. When autumn arrives and chlorophyll breaks down, the carotenoids remain, giving rise to the golden leaves of birch, aspen, and ginkgo trees. Anthocyanins, on the other hand, are responsible for many of the reds, purples, and blues we see in plants. They're water-soluble and stored in the vacuoles of plant cells. What's fascinating about anthocyanins is that their colour can change depending on the pH of their environment. In acidic conditions, they appear red. In neutral pH, they shift toward purple. In alkaline conditions, they become blue or even greenish. This property has practical applications too. Red cabbage, which is rich in anthocyanins, can be used as a natural pH indicator in chemistry. Boil the cabbage, extract the pigment-rich liquid, and add it to a test solution. If the liquid turns pink, it's acidic. If it turns greenish-yellow, it's alkaline. It's a science experiment that comes straight from the garden. Anthocyanins have many roles in plants. They can protect leaves from ultraviolet radiation, act as antioxidants, and help in signalling to pollinators. But one of their most visually striking roles is in flowers and fruits. Let's talk flowers. The bright colours of petals are not for our benefit. They're billboards for pollinators. Bees, butterflies, birds, and even bats rely on colour to identify which flowers are worth visiting. Different pollinators are attracted to different colours. Bees, for example, are especially drawn to blue and violet flowers and can even see into the ultraviolet spectrum. Many flowers have ultraviolet markings known as nectar guides, patterns that are invisible to human eyes but serve as runway lights for bees, directing them toward the nectar and pollen. Hummingbirds, with their keen vision and rapid metabolism, tend to favour red and orange flowers, which often contain higher concentrations of nectar. Butterflies are attracted to a wider range of colours, including pinks and purples. Bats, which visit flowers at night, rely less on colour and more on scent and shape, but some flowers may still use pale hues, like white or cream, to stand out in the moonlight. Interestingly, the same flower can look entirely different to different species. To a human, a daisy might look simple and white. To a bee, It may be bursting with ultraviolet patterns and contrasting colours. Plants in this way have evolved to speak many visual languages at once. Fruit, too, uses colour to communicate, but for a different audience. Once pollination has occurred and a seed has developed, plants need a way to get that seed far from the parent plant. Enter fruit. When a fruit ripens, it often changes colour, going from green to bright red, orange, or purple. This isn't just a pretty transformation, it's a signal to animals that the fruit is ripe, sweet, and ready to eat. The green of unripe fruit comes from chlorophyll, which breaks down as the fruit matures. As chlorophyll fades, other pigments like carotenoids and anthocyanins become visible. A banana turns from green to yellow, a tomato shifts from green to red. Grapes turn from green to purple. These bright colours are evolutionary invitations. Eat me, carry my seeds, and drop them somewhere far away. In return, animals get a meal, and the plant gets a ride for its offspring. It's a mutualistic exchange. Colour as currency. Some fruits go even further, using both colour and scent to attract attention. A ripe mango isn't just golden yellow. It also releases aromatic compounds that waft through the air. Similarly, many berries use a combination of visual and olfactory cues to stand out in a crowded forest understory. But what about plants that don't rely on animals for pollination or seed dispersal? What's the role of colour then? Even wind-pollinated or self-pollinating plants use colour for other functions. For example, new leaves often emerge red or bronze thanks to anthocyanins. These pigments may help protect delicate new tissue from sun damage or herbivores. Some plants even use colour as camouflage or warning. Certain flowers mimic the appearance of other species, like orchids that resemble bees or wasps, to trick pollinators into visiting. Others may turn red or purple when stressed, due to increased anthocyanin production. This can be a signal to herbivores that the plant is chemically defended, or simply a way to protect tissues from further harm. Autumn provides perhaps the most poetic display of plant colour change. As daylight shortens and temperatures drop, deciduous trees begin to break down chlorophyll and reabsorb nutrients from their leaves. This process reveals the yellow carotenoids and sometimes triggers the production of red anthocyanins. The result is the spectacular reds, oranges and golds of fall foliage, a show that lasts only a few weeks, but stirs the hearts of millions. Not every tree turns red though. The production of anthocyanins in autumn is still something of a mystery. Some scientists believe it helps protect leaves from sun damage during the nutrient recovery process. Others suggest it may deter insects or signal to animals that the leaves are unpalatable. Still others think it may be a coincidence, a colourful side effect with no clear purpose. What is clear is that autumn colour is the result of finely tuned physiological processes. Temperature, sunlight, soil moisture, and genetic factors all play a role. A dry summer followed by sunny, cool autumn days tends to produce the most vivid colours. It's a fragile, fleeting miracle, a seasonal exhale of light and pigment before winter sets in. Of course, plant colours have long fascinated humans too, not just for their beauty, but for their utility. Early humans used plant pigments as dyes, paints, and medicines. The deep blue of indigo, the golden tones of turmeric, the scarlet of madder root, all are derived from plant-based compounds. Even today, many natural dyes are sourced from plants, and researchers continue to explore how plant pigments can be used in sustainable textiles, cosmetics, and food. Speaking of food, we often eat colour as much as flavour. Bright red tomatoes, vibrant green spinach, deep purple eggplants. Our appetites are guided by our eyes. And these colours can also signal nutritional value. Carotenoids like beta-carotene are converted into vitamin A. Anthocyanins have antioxidant properties. Chlorophyll, while not essential to humans, may have minor health benefits as well. In recent years, plant pigments have also found their way into biotechnology. Scientists are experimenting with engineering crops that change colour to indicate ripeness, drought stress, or disease. These smart plants could help farmers monitor fields more efficiently and reduce chemical use. In laboratories, pigments are being used in biosensors, solar cells, and even biodegradable electronics. So plant colour is more than just decoration. It's signal, protection, attraction, and function. It speaks to bees and birds, deer and humans, microbes and molecules. It carries messages across species, across seasons, and even across centuries. And like all colours in nature, it's part of a larger system, woven into the fabric of life, shaped by evolution and painted by light. Next time you stroll through a garden or wander under a canopy of autumn leaves, take a moment to notice the colours around you. Each one tells a story. Each petal, leaf and berry is a chapter in an ancient book written in green and gold and crimson. A book that's still being written, one bloom at a time. Imagine a creature with no bones, 3 hearts and blue blood. A creature that can change colour and shape in the blink of an eye, slip through impossibly narrow crevices, and solve puzzles just for the fun of it. Now imagine this creature is also a living light show, able to flash, shimmer and vanish into its surroundings, using a skin that functions like a high-definition, full-body display screen. Welcome to the world of the cephalopods, squids, octopuses and cuttlefish, nature's undisputed masters of colour. While many animals use colour for communication, camouflage or intimidation, cephalopods do all of that, and more. Their ability to manipulate light and colour is so advanced it borders on science fiction. Yet it's very real. These marine invertebrates have evolved one of the most complex systems of dynamic coloration in the animal kingdom. It's not just beautiful, it is deeply functional, and it's powered by some of the most sophisticated skin in all of nature. To understand how cephalopods achieve their remarkable displays, we need to take a close look at their skin. Unlike animals that rely solely on pigments, cephalopods use multiple layers of specialized cells that work together to control colour, pattern, and even texture. These layers are called chromatophores, iridophores, and leucophores. Let's begin with the most well-known chromatophores. Chromatophores are pigment-containing cells that expand and contract to reveal or conceal colour. Each chromatophore is like a tiny elastic sac of pigment surrounded by radial muscle fibres. When the muscles contract, the sac stretches, spreading the pigment out into a flat disc. When the muscles relax, the sac collapses back into a dot. By expanding or contracting thousands of these cells in coordinated patterns, cephalopods can rapidly shift their overall appearance. Different chromatophores contain different pigments, usually yellow, red, brown or black. These are relatively basic hues, but the way cephalopods layer and manipulate them can produce complex patterns, gradients, and even motion-like effects across the skin. Imagine ripples of colour sweeping down an octopus's arm, or a sudden flush of red when a cuttlefish gets startled. This isn't just camouflage, it's language. Beneath the chromatophores lie the iridophores. Iridophores are structural colour cells. They don't contain pigment. Instead, they reflect light through layers of plate-like structures made from proteins like reflectin. By changing the spacing between these layers, cephalopods can manipulate which wavelengths of light are reflected, producing brilliant iridescent blues, greens, silvers and purples. Unlike chromatophores, iridophores are responsible for much of the shimmering metallic quality seen in squids and cuttlefish. What's especially impressive is that cephalopods can control their iridophores actively. While many animals with structural colour rely on fixed nanostructures that passively reflect light, cephalopods can dynamically tune their iridophores. They adjust the spacing of the reflective layers using neurotransmitters like acetylcholine, allowing them to shift colours or brightness in real time. Below the iridophores are the leucophores. Leucophores are broadband reflectors. They scatter ambient light, much like a white t-shirt reflects all visible wavelengths. In cephalopods, leucophores help the animal blend in with its environment by taking on the general tone and brightness of the surroundings. If the light is blue, they reflect blue. If it's green, they reflect green. Think of them as a flexible base layer that enhances whatever coloration the upper layers are creating. These three layers, chromatophores, iridophores, and leucophores, work together like a finely tuned orchestra. Chromatophores provide the bold notes. Iridophores add shimmer and complexity. Leucophores blend everything seamlessly into the background. And because cephalopods can control these layers independently and simultaneously, the number of possible combinations is mind-boggling. But cephalopods don't stop at colour. They can also change the texture of their skin using structures called papillae. These are muscle-controlled protrusions that can be raised or flattened at will. By adjusting their papillae, cephalopods can mimic the surface texture of rocks, coral, sand, or even algae. Combine that with perfect colour matching, and you have a creature that can disappear in plain sight. The speed of these changes is astonishing. An octopus can go from pale and smooth to dark and spiky in less than 1 second. It's a bit like having a full-body digital display with real-time touch sensitivity, except it's biological. So why do they do it? One major reason is camouflage. Cephalopods are soft-bodied and highly edible, and in the wild, being seen often means being eaten. Their ability to blend into their surroundings is a powerful defense. Even more impressively, they can do this despite being largely colorblind. Yes, colorblind. Cephalopods are believed to have only one type of photoreceptor in their eyes, which means they likely cannot perceive color in the same way humans can. So how do they match their surroundings so well? One theory is that they use brightness, contrast, and polarized light to interpret their environment. Some researchers even suggest they may use chromatic aberration, differences in how various wavelengths of light focus through their eyes, as a way to detect colour without traditional colour vision. Whatever the method, it works. Cephalopods can match not only the colour and brightness of their background, but also the spatial patterns like stripes, dots, or gradients. They do this using neural templates stored in the brain. Scientists have identified at least 3 main camouflage modes in cuttlefish: uniform, mottled, and disruptive. Uniform camouflage helps the animal blend into featureless backgrounds like sand or mud. Mottled camouflage creates a dappled effect, useful for hiding among gravel or pebbles. Disruptive camouflage breaks up the outline of the animal with high contrast patterns, making it harder for predators to identify the shape or orientation of the body. But camouflage is only part of the story. Cephalopods also use colour for communication. In social species like cuttlefish and some squids, skin displays convey messages ranging from aggression and submission to courtship and coordination. A male cuttlefish might flash dark stripes to warn off rivals, then shift to a smooth, pale display to woo a female. In some cases, they even display different patterns on each side of the body, sending one message to a female on the left and another to a rival male on the right. It's visual multitasking at its finest. Octopuses, while generally more solitary, also use body patterning to communicate mood and intent. A calm octopus might display soft, neutral tones. An agitated one might turn red and inflate its papillae to appear larger and more threatening. The mimic octopus takes this even further by impersonating other animals entirely, like lionfish, sea snakes, or flatfish, complete with matching movements and coloration. And then there's expression. Some researchers believe that cephalopods use colour not just to communicate with others, but as a kind of self-expression. In captivity, octopuses have been observed changing colour while sleeping, possibly even while dreaming. One individual famously turned pale, then dark, then striped while tucked inside a shell, seemingly experiencing some internal story. We can't know for sure what's going on in their minds, but the connection between emotion and skin display seems deeply ingrained. Of course, humans have taken notice. Artists, designers, and engineers have long been inspired by cephalopod skin. Researchers are working on developing smart materials that mimic chromatophore systems, creating fabrics that change colour with temperature, light, or electrical signals. These bio-inspired technologies could one day lead to adaptive camouflage suits, mood-responsive fashion, or dynamic lighting systems. But while we marvel at what cephalopods can do, it's important to remember how ancient these abilities are. Cephalopods have been around for over 500 million years. They were exploring the oceans long before the first trees appeared on land. Their coloration systems have evolved not in decades or centuries, but over countless generations, fine-tuned by the pressures of survival and communication. There's something profoundly moving about that. These aren't just clever animals with cool tricks. They are living canvases, each display the result of deep evolutionary history. Their colours speak to other cephalopods, to predators, and perhaps even to themselves. So next time you watch an octopus pulse with colour, or a cuttlefish ripple with light beneath the waves, take a moment to appreciate what you're seeing. This is not just camouflage. It's not just display. It is living language, fluid, visual, ancient, a masterpiece written in skin, painted by nerves, and animated by one of the most fascinating minds in the sea. When you look out at the world, it seems obvious that colour is everywhere. Vivid greens in the trees, warm reds and yellows in the sunset, the kaleidoscope of colours in a coral reef. But have you ever stopped to wonder what colour looks like to someone else? Not to another person, but to an entirely different species. A dog, a bird, a bee, even a shrimp. Because here's the fascinating truth. Colour is not an absolute property. It's a perception. Something created not just by light, but by eyes and brains working together. And those eyes and brains come in an astonishing variety. To truly understand colour, then, we need to explore how different animals see it. And to do that, we must start with how humans perceive colour, because our vision is our baseline, the world we know. Human eyes have 3 types of cone cells, each sensitive to a different range of light wavelengths: short, blue, medium, green, and long, red. These 3 cone types allow us to see millions of colours through various combinations of stimulation. This kind of vision is called trichromacy. It's pretty good, evolutionarily speaking, and it allows us to distinguish ripe fruit from unripe, healthy skin from pale, and even subtle changes in someone's mood based on facial coloration. But despite our confidence in how we see the world, trichromacy is not the gold standard. In fact, in the grand scheme of nature, it's somewhat average. Let's step down the ladder for a moment and look at animals with dichromatic vision. Those that have only 2 types of cone cells. Many mammals fall into this category, including dogs, cats, horses, and most non-primate mammals. They can typically distinguish between blues and yellows, but have trouble with reds and greens. To a dog, a bright red ball in green grass might not stand out as dramatically as it does to you. It may appear more like a muddy yellow or brown, depending on lighting and context. This doesn't mean dogs live in a black and white world. That's a myth. But their colour perception is certainly more limited than ours. Still, what they lack in colour discrimination, they make up for in other ways. Dogs, for instance, have excellent night vision and motion detection, thanks to a higher number of rod cells in their eyes, and a reflective layer called the tapetum lucidum, which boosts light sensitivity. Cats too trade colour clarity for enhanced vision in low light, essential for their crepuscular hunting habits. Now let's move up the ladder to animals that surpass human vision. Birds, for example, have tetrachromatic vision. That means they possess 4 types of cone cells, not just 3. Along with red, green and blue, many birds can also detect ultraviolet light, a part of the spectrum entirely invisible to humans. What appears to us as a white feather may have ultraviolet patterns that guide a bird to a mate or signal species identity. Pigeons and zebra finches are often studied for their visual abilities, and the results are dazzling. A bird flying over a forest may see not just a blanket of green, but layers of spectral detail, some of it invisible to us. UV-reflecting petals, patterns on fruits, even subtle marks on other birds' feathers come into focus in their world. It's not just a richer palette, it's a whole new dimension of visual information. In fact, recent studies have shown that many bird species have oil droplets in their cone cells, tiny filters that fine-tune their colour perception even further. These oil droplets sharpen contrast and extend the range of visible wavelengths, making their colour vision remarkably precise. Bees too see in ultraviolet. Though they are also trichromatic, their cone cells are tuned to different parts of the spectrum than ours. They see ultraviolet, blue and green, but not red. To a bee, a red flower may look dark or dull. But flowers that seem plain to us often have elaborate UV patterns that act as landing guides. These so-called nectar guides point the way to the flower's pollen and nectar, improving the efficiency of pollination. It's a beautiful example of coevolution. Flowers evolve to attract the eyes of their pollinators, not ours. What we think of as colourful may be entirely irrelevant to the bees, birds and butterflies doing the important work of helping plants reproduce. Then we have fish, especially those living in shallow tropical waters. Reef fish often exhibit bright colours and striking patterns, which aren't just for show. Many species of fish are believed to be tetrachromatic or even pentachromatic, meaning they may have 5 or more cone types. Some of these cones are sensitive to ultraviolet or far-red light, enabling complex visual communication. Wrasses and damselfish, for example, use UV reflective patterns on their faces and bodies to signal to each other. To human divers, these fish may all look similar, but to other fish, their appearances are as distinct as fingerprints. But the undisputed champion of animal vision, the heavyweight of hyperspectral sight, is the mantis shrimp. Mantis shrimp are crustaceans found in tropical and subtropical oceans. They are small, but they pack a punch, literally. Their raptorial appendages strike with the speed of a bullet, smashing shells and stunning prey. But their real superpower lies in their eyes. Each mantis shrimp eye is divided into 3 regions and moves independently. They possess at least 12 types of photoreceptor cells, and some species have up to 16. That's 12 or more cones compared to our 3. They can see ultraviolet, visible, and polarized light. Polarization is a property of light that humans can only perceive through special lenses, but mantis shrimp detect it naturally, like seeing through a secret code in the light itself. But here's the twist. Despite their large number of photoreceptors, mantis shrimp don't appear to have better colour discrimination than humans. They may even be worse at distinguishing between similar hues. This puzzled scientists for years until a new theory emerged. Mantis shrimp might process colour in a way that favours speed over subtlety. Their eyes don't mix colours the way ours do. Instead, they seem to perform a kind of quick scan operation, assigning each wavelength to a specific channel and moving on. It's like reading by colour coding rather than blending. This could allow them to process visual information more quickly, which would be useful in their fast-paced, aggressive world. And let's not forget polarization vision. Some animals, like certain insects, cuttlefish, and even some birds, can detect the orientation of light waves. This is useful for seeing through water glare, detecting prey, or navigating using the sun's polarized light patterns. Humans are almost entirely blind to this, though some people can perceive a faint Heidinger's brush, a subtle yellowish bow-tie shape in their field of vision when looking at polarized light sources. Most of us don't even notice it. Why did colour vision evolve in such diverse ways? The answer lies in ecology. Every species sees what it needs to survive. A nocturnal predator doesn't need to see a rainbow. It needs to see in the dark. A flower-visiting pollinator doesn't need high acuity. It needs to spot UV patterns and bright petals from a distance. A prey animal might benefit from detecting fast movement and contrasts rather than fine details. Evolution shapes perception to match the challenges of a creature's environment. Colour is just one of the many variables, and this brings us to the philosophical heart of the matter. Is your red the same as my red? Do we all see colour the same way? Even among humans, colour perception varies. Some people have red-green colour blindness, usually caused by the absence or malfunction of certain cone cells. Others may have tetrachromacy, a rare condition where a person, usually a woman, has 4 functioning types of cones, allowing them to perceive more colours than the average person. These tetrachromatic individuals can sometimes see shades and distinctions that others miss entirely. Imagine being able to see 100 million colours instead of 1 million. Some describe it as a richer, more layered visual world, though many tetrachromats don't realise their ability unless they're tested under specific conditions. So when you admire a painting, or a flower, or a sunset, you're not seeing something objective. You're experiencing a subjective sensation, one shaped by biology, environment, and neural interpretation. It's as real as anything you feel, but it isn't the same for everyone. In that way, colour is a kind of shared illusion, a beautiful agreement between light and life. It's not in the object, but in the interaction. A bluebird isn't inherently blue. It simply reflects light in a way that triggers your blue-sensitive cones, and your brain paints the scene. A bee, seeing the same bird, might not notice it at all. A mantis shrimp might see something altogether alien. And that's the wonder of it. Colour is not universal. It is endlessly adaptable, endlessly varied. It is a perceptual map drawn by eyes that evolved under different skies, in different waters, and through different challenges. So the next time you gaze at something colourful, whether a field of wildflowers, a tropical fish tank, or the feathers of a bird, remember that you're not just seeing, you're interpreting. You're translating a complex shifting reality into a sensation you call colour. And somewhere, nearby or far away, another creature is doing the same thing, differently. In the grand theatre of life, colour is not just something we see, it's something we experience, and every pair of eyes sees a different version of the same dazzling play. Light, pigment, structure, perception. By now we've journeyed through much of the colourful spectrum of life. But before we begin our descent into a peaceful sleep, or perhaps into an even deeper curiosity, there's one more piece of the colour puzzle to explore. It's a category that glows in the dark, dances under ultraviolet beams, and sometimes feels more like science fiction than science fact. This is the realm of biofluorescence and bioluminescence, two natural phenomena that allow organisms to glow in ways that seem almost magical. They are not quite the same thing, but both belong to the family of living light, and both are far more common than you might expect. Let's begin with bioluminescence, the ability of living organisms to produce light through chemical reactions inside their bodies. Unlike reflection or refraction, which rely on external light sources, bioluminescence creates light from within. Fireflies are probably the most familiar example to many of us, flickering their way through summer evenings. But fireflies are just the tip of the glowing iceberg. Bioluminescence is especially common in the ocean, where more than 3/4 of marine animals in the midwater and deep sea layers are believed to possess some form of it. Jellyfish, comb jellies, certain species of squid, anglerfish, and even some sharks all glow in the dark. The chemistry behind bioluminescence usually involves two main components: a light-emitting molecule called luciferin and an enzyme called luciferase. When luciferin reacts with oxygen, catalyzed by luciferase, it releases energy in the form of visible light. Some organisms also use cofactors like ATP or metal ions to regulate the reaction. It's a clean and efficient process, often producing little or no heat, hence the term cold light. But what purpose does this glow serve? As it turns out, quite a few. In the dark depths of the ocean, where sunlight never penetrates, light is power. Bioluminescence can be used to lure prey, like the anglerfish, which dangles a glowing lure in front of its jaws. It can also be used to confuse predators. Some squid and small crustaceans emit clouds of glowing fluid, much like an inky distraction, allowing them to escape while their would-be predator is momentarily dazzled. For other species, bioluminescence is a form of communication. Some fish use flashes of light to find mates or coordinate movement in schools. Certain species of ostracods, tiny crustaceans, produce intricate patterns of blinking lights during courtship, each species with its own luminous rhythm. In the case of deep sea dragonfish, bioluminescence helps them hunt. They possess a bioluminescent searchlight just under each eye, allowing them to scan for prey in the abyss. Even more fascinating, some dragonfish emit red bioluminescent light, one of the only colours that most deep-sea animals can't see. This gives them a stealth advantage. They can spot prey that can't see them coming. Now let's drift toward the shore and into the realm of biofluorescence. While bioluminescence involves producing light chemically, biofluorescence is different. It happens when an organism absorbs light, usually ultraviolet or blue, and re-emits it at a longer, visible wavelength. In other words, these organisms don't glow on their own. They glow only when bathed in specific types of light, like a natural version of glow-in-the-dark paint reacting to a black light. Biofluorescence is surprisingly widespread across many groups of animals. It's found in corals, jellyfish, fish, turtles, sharks, fungi, and even some birds. It's especially prominent in coral reef environments, where ultraviolet and blue light from the sun penetrates deeply into clear water. Corals, for instance, often contain fluorescent proteins that glow green, red, orange, or blue under ultraviolet light. These proteins were once thought to be byproducts of photosynthesis or waste products, but scientists now believe they serve important functions, possibly protecting the coral from harmful UV rays or helping to regulate light for the symbiotic algae living within their tissues. Some species of Mantis shrimp, those colourful punchy crustaceans with superhero vision, have fluorescent markings used in communication. Under the right light, these markings seem to pulse or flash, allowing individuals to signal territory or intent. In the dense and visually noisy environment of a coral reef, fluorescence provides a private channel for communication, one that predators may not detect. Sea turtles too have joined the list of glowing creatures. In 2015, scientists diving near the Solomon Islands discovered that hawksbill sea turtles fluoresce under ultraviolet light. Their shells glow with patches of red and green, though the precise function of this phenomenon remains a mystery. And then there are fish. Many species of reef fish fluoresce, especially those in the goby and wrasse families. Under natural sunlight, they appear fairly ordinary. But under blue light with a yellow filter, conditions that mimic ultraviolet-rich reef environments, they glow like neon signs. Their stripes, spots, and fins pop with fluorescent hues that may be invisible to predators, but perfectly visible to other members of their species. One fascinating study found that some fish possess not just fluorescent patterns, but also the visual systems needed to detect them. This means that their fluorescence isn't just an accident, it's a form of visual signalling, a private conversation in light. Even birds, though not traditionally associated with biofluorescence, have shown unexpected flashes of it. Some parrots, when exposed to UV light, reveal fluorescent patches on their feathers, likely used in mate selection. And while we humans can't see it unaided, birds themselves can, thanks to their tetrachromatic vision, which includes the ultraviolet range. In fungi, fluorescence is more mysterious. Certain species of mushrooms and bracket fungi glow faintly in the dark, often greenish or bluish. This is sometimes referred to as foxfire or fairy fire. One hypothesis is that the light attracts insects which then help disperse the fungus's spores. Whether or not this is true for all bioluminescent fungi is still under study, but the idea of glowing mushrooms spreading themselves through beetle couriers is, if nothing else, delightfully eerie. One of the most iconic examples of natural light, however, is the glowing sea. Have you ever walked along a beach at night and seen your footsteps light up in blue? That's likely the work of bioluminescent plankton, such as Noctiluca scintillans or certain species of dinoflagellates. When disturbed by movement, waves, paddles, or your bare feet, these microscopic organisms emit a soft, ghostly glow. Entire coastlines can shimmer with this eerie light, especially in warm waters during certain seasons. It's hard to describe how magical this experience is if you haven't seen it firsthand. The sea glows with every splash, every ripple. Swimmers appear to be outlined in light. Boats leave trails like comets, and all of it is the product of ancient biochemical reactions, happening invisibly until something sets them off. Interestingly, some organisms can combine bioluminescence and biofluorescence. They produce their own light, and then use fluorescent proteins to shift its colour or intensity. This layering of light is a kind of biological special effect, a flexible system that can respond to changes in environment, behaviour, or even internal emotion. One reason we know so much about fluorescent proteins, in fact, is because of scientific research inspired by jellyfish. The green fluorescent protein, GFP, was originally discovered in the jellyfish Equirria victoria. This glowing protein has since become one of the most widely used tools in molecular biology. By attaching GFP to other proteins, researchers can track how cells grow, divide, and respond to stimuli. It's helped unlock breakthroughs in neuroscience, cancer research, and genetics. In this way, the glow of a jellyfish, once admired simply for its beauty, has become a beacon for human knowledge, lighting up our understanding of life at the microscopic level. But why are glowing traits so common in the sea and so rare on land? It likely comes down to light availability. In the deep sea, sunlight fades quickly with depth. Beyond a few hundred meters, the world becomes a perpetual night. In this environment, bioluminescence is often the only source of visible light. Natural selection has shaped countless species to exploit this, either for hunting, hiding, or signalling. On land, by contrast, there's usually plenty of light. Most terrestrial environments are illuminated for at least part of the day. This makes glowing traits less useful, except in niche settings, like caves, forests, or nighttime ecosystems. Fireflies, glowworms, and bioluminescent fungi occupy these niches. But in general, glowing is less advantageous on dry land. Still, the idea of a glowing forest, or a self-illuminating plant, has captured human imagination for centuries. Scientists and engineers are now exploring ways to borrow nature's glow for our own use. By inserting genes for fluorescent proteins into plants or bacteria, researchers are experimenting with creating light sources that don't require electricity. Imagine streetlights powered by glowing trees, or emergency exit signs made from glowing moss. These ideas aren't science fiction, they're already being prototyped in labs. The future may be lit not by wires, but by genes. And that brings us to a final thought. When we think of colour, we often think of it in the daylight, sunlight bouncing off feathers, flowers, and fish scales. But nature does not stop painting when the sun goes down. In the dark, another palette emerges, one drawn from chemistry, physics, and the soft pulse of photons, the glow of a firefly, the shimmer of a fluorescent coral, the deep-sea anglerfish's eerie lantern. These are not just oddities, they're part of the same grand spectrum we've been exploring all along. Light, in all its forms, is the brush with which life paints itself. So if you find yourself outside on a clear night, listen to the stars, watch the water, and imagine the world aglow, not just in colour, but in luminescence, a secret light dancing just below the surface, waiting for the right moment to shine. And so, after drifting through shimmering wings, glowing oceans, and the secret signals of feathers and fungi, we arrive gently at the close of our journey. We've wandered through the hidden mechanics of how nature makes colour, not just through pigments and paints, but with tiny mirrors, clever molecules, and delicate tricks of the light. We've learned that colour isn't just something seen, but something created, by sunlight and structure, biology and brain. It is, in the end, a shared illusion, one that bees and birds, jellyfish and mantis shrimp, leaves and lizards all experience in their own uniquely evolved way. Some creatures see what we cannot. Some flash colours we will never know. Some, like us, build entire worlds around the hues they can name. But whatever the method, be it a splash of red petals to draw in a hummingbird, or the sudden vanishing act of an octopus in full camouflage, colour in nature is never accidental. It's always doing something. Communicating, protecting, luring, hiding. It is a language without words, a dance of photons that tells 1,000 stories at once. And now, before we float off into a soft, colour-filled dream, let me ask again, where in the world are you watching from? Is it night or day where you are? Are you curled under covers, bathed in moonlight, or sitting quietly, letting your mind drift like a glowing plankton in a gentle tide? Wherever you are, and whatever time it is, thank you. Thank you for joining me on this gentle meander through the spectrum of life. If you found any of this interesting, I'd be so grateful if you gave the video a like or maybe even subscribe to The Sleepy Scientist for more relaxing journeys into science and wonder. It really does help this cozy little corner of the internet grow, and if I've kept you awake instead of helping you fall asleep, I hope at least your mind is a little more curious than when we started. Ever comes first. This has been The Sleepy Scientist. Good night.